Hey guys, Darren Carr here, Coach of Wise Pods, and welcome back to another episode of our round review series. On today's episode, we will be reviewing round 12 and the first of the bye rounds. So, round 12, we saw the first of the bye rounds. We had 4 teams that were on the bye. So, how did we do? So, I scored a 1932, so pretty good. Round rank of 5,059. So a lot better than most, which is a positive, and jumped up over 3,000 spots, and now we're sitting at 11,283. So definitely moving in the right direction after probably a month of moving in the wrong direction. So that is a positive and sort of shows, bye planning is really useful and you can make a lot of movements in here. So hopefully we can continue this trend and keep moving closer to the top in the next coming weeks. But how did we score? So, like I said, 1932, really positive. Where did that come from, though? So, I had Luke Ryan, who was probably one of the biggest ones, absolutely sponged it up in that back line for the Fremantle against the Melbourne there. Just absolutely killed it. Just loves to take a +6. And, yeah, he's so good. I'm so glad I moved Sheasel onto him. It's been a really positive move, and he's been averaging, well over 130 since I picked him up 3 weeks ago. So, really positive for him, and I know he is a huge target for a lot of other people after his bye. So, that is good to feel. It feels good to sort of be one step ahead of the competition where I've got him and not many others do. I know he's getting up there in ownership now. What is he, 20%? 21, yeah. So, he is getting up there, but yeah, he's been absolutely awesome for me. I just sort of wish I backed him in a little bit more to be my captain. Was really hot on him being captain, just didn't go with it in the end. A few others here. Nick Martin did okay, 97. Nothing too much to worry about there. I think it was over 100 and then he dropped back after maybe losing a tackle or something. But nothing too much to worry about there. He's just that consistent sort of 100 guy at the moment, so he's doing well. Hayden Young, 108, was probably a little bit disappointing given that he was on like 104 or 5 in the 3/4 time. Just sort of sat out in the last quarter, did very little. So bit of management there for him, which we sort of anticipate from the Fremantle side here and there. So nothing too much to worry about. Would have been nice to have a big ceiling score from him to really bump up that price. But at the end of the day, he's a hold for the year, and not too worried about that. Bonner is an interesting one this week. 60 after 2 back-to-back poor scores, 65 and 60 now. So he may have to be moved on. He's highly in my trade-out targets, and I know he is he is for everyone else as well. So dropped 23k this week, 118 break even. It's just a huge concern for him realistically, because I know he had a pretty good first half. I thought. Let's just bring up his score real quick here. So in the second half, he only had 15 points. So in the third, he scored 13 points, 3 kicks, 1 tackle, and then in the fourth, he only had 2 disposals, which is one kick and one handball. So a little bit of a concern there. This is one of the games that I didn't actually get to watch too much, just because I was in Melbourne and I was at the Hawthorn and Crows game. Which, sorry for the dress code here. I'm in my hoodie. It's getting pretty cold here in Adelaide, so this may become a bit more of a regular occurrence, but hopefully you guys don't mind too much. But back onto Bonner. There's concerns for me in terms of his role. It sounds like he's been moved to like a wing a little bit, especially in the second half where we saw he didn't score very well. We saw it a little bit last week as well, but I just was hoping it wouldn't stick. But definitely a concern for me, and he will probably have to go very shortly. If not this week, then possibly, definitely at his bye. So make sure you have that planned out. Sexton put up a ton for us, 102. Really happy with that. 30 touches and 8 marks, 1 tackle. Absolutely just killing it. And the combo between him and Flanders is just absolutely awesome. Flanders kicks it out, walks out of the square, kicks it to Sexton, gets +6, and then handballs it back to Flanders. It's just an elite combo. And I'm really hoping that because they play so well together, that those two can just stay on the side, and Flanders doesn't have to be a trade out in round 15 or round 14 whenever his bye is. So fingers crossed that is the way, because I do obviously his scoring is absolutely elite, and I hope he can stay in and be a top 6 forward for us. Close C, 49, a little bit disappointing. Now going backwards in price, so he is one that I am looking at moving on as well. But if you don't want to move him on, I can understand the reasoning behind it, given he has St Kilda, who are a super easy matchup in terms of wingmen. So he could absolutely kill it, and go back to being this high 90 guy, or even put up a ton for us, which we have seen in the past. He's just been sort of consolidating a little bit more to this 60 sort of person at the moment, and then obviously dropped a pretty bad one on the weekend with a 49. So not what we wanted, but at the end of the day, it was best 18, and that score dropped off anyway for me. So that was one of the scores there. Moving on to the midfield, a little bit up and down. So brought in Nick Dacos last week, was really good, really happy with him. Didn't go with the VC on him in the end. I did go with English, which did gain me the extra 6 points, and I did take that. Probably shouldn't have, as I was going into max score, but you're not risking 116 for a 122. You're taking that every day of the week. Butters, really disappointing. He's really hurting now. I really don't appreciate what he's doing. I get a lot of attention now without Rosie, so I'm just fingers crossed Rosie's back in round 14, and he can start pushing out some of these big numbers again and be a bit more consistent as he was at the start of the season with, being pretty consistent with a 110 or low 100. So hopefully he can get back to that. Not too much concern. He is on the bye this week, so I'm not looking to move off of him. Zach Merritt, again, super consistent, 115, really happy with that. Still been one of the better picks for me so far this year. Just not probably getting the super ceiling scores that I'm sort of expecting in, the easy matchups. It just seems to be the way this year. Not the matchups aren't really having too much of effect. Like you see his highest scores against fucking Port, who are the hardest matchup. Like, how does that happen? Doesn't seem to be working for me just yet, but maybe I need to change my thinking a little bit. Now my plus 3, Marcus Bontempelli, 159. What a beast he was. Put up his career high fantasy score. 38 touches, 5 marks, 9 tackles, 2 goals. Just was absolutely everywhere. And it was actually a super big privilege to be watching this firsthand at Marvel Stadium on the Friday night. He was just absolutely everywhere, and it was such a good game to go to. He just led from the front and got his boys over the line against the Collingwood. So he's just absolutely amazing, and hopefully this is the kickstart he needed to continue this form. So fingers crossed for that. In terms of if you wanted to trade him in, again, we're on the buys now, so it's pretty simple that you don't trade in players that are going to come on the buys. You need to target players that are now coming off the buy and going to play for the rest of the year. So I wouldn't be looking at him just yet. Maybe look at him after the round 15 buy. Moving on to the second half of the midfield, Clayton Oliver, just another 96, really mediocre again. Just, being consistent around that area, just not producing enough, but is, Port and paid for him. You can't expect too much at the end of the day. Hopefully he does go pretty well against the Collingwood Magpies this week. Obviously we know how decimated they are, and he could put up a pretty decent score, so I'm hoping for that one. Hasn't made too much cash since we bought him. I think we bought him at 720k or something like that, so has only made the 30k, so fingers crossed he goes well there. Jake Saligo, my boy, has just, not great, unfortunately. Was expecting a bigger score than this. 81 after the very stinky score last week. Just hasn't been the pick that I sort of expected him to be. I picked him up, after, back-to-back 90s and a ton. It's just been really underwhelming. So, and has actually gone backwards in price now. So that's been a failed pick in my eyes. Hopefully he can put up a pretty decent score against Richmond this week, and before his sort of farewell, I may even look to trade him out after this game. If not, definitely at his buy. So he's on his way out pretty shortly. So there's that one. Sharpie is the interesting one this week. Obviously, a lot of people, he's on his buy this week, so I think a lot of people will start to move him off, but a lot of people are tossing up whether to keep him because he has been super, has been super awesome in the last sort of 5 weeks. Hasn't dropped below 80, put up a couple of big tons, just been super consistent, so he has been awesome. Did save his score a little bit this week. He was sort of looking closer to a 50, I thought, and then in that last quarter, he did put up a pretty decent score, if I can bring that up real quick. Come on, load. Where is he? So he had like a 30-point last quarter. So yeah, really saved it in the end there, which is good. At the end of the day, it's buys, so best 18. Not too much there. I'm definitely looking at jumping off Sharp. I just think he's a rookie at the end of the day. He's fattened. His break even's now getting up there. This is the perfect time to move him off of him. I've planned to move off of him, so I'm going to stick to that plan no matter this scenario. So, and he's also his cash on his head gets me to who I want to be. So really, really looking at that. McCullough 56, sorry, was looking a lot bigger. Was looking massive, honestly. I think he was at like 51 points at halftime and just absolutely stalled. I don't know what happened, just ran out of legs or just, maybe it's a bit of a game change. I didn't get to watch this game too much given I was Melbourne, but yeah, I think he's going to hold steady. He's hopefully going to be a bit more consistent and will be pretty good for the next couple of weeks for sure. Rock department was pretty good this week. I think not the biggest scores in the rock department, but in terms of, obviously Cherry and Grundy were off, so this is where I really made a lot of ground up. Obviously, good to see English back in some form, 116. Did sort of predict it, given he was only up against Dusty Cameron, so that was a super easy matchup. Does have a bit of a tougher time this week and even sort of next week against the two-ruck lineup of Sean Dusty and Luke Jackson. So have to see how it goes. Don't think I'm planning on moving on just yet, but I think he's, one to watch for sure. Flanders, really good. Happy with him. Did have a bit of a concern. I thought he was subbed out on like very low score, maybe like a 6 or something like that. But came on and absolutely killed it from there. So not too much to worry about there. He's just super consistent. Jack McRae put up a very decent score for me on the Friday night, which was awesome to see. Put up 2 goals in the first quarter, which got his scoring up to after a flyer. And did slow a fair bit. Took 7 marks, which was really pleasing to see. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I'm not gonna just be like, oh, get on him, and now he's a keeper. We know how bad he has been recently, so I can only hope that, for my sake, that he is consistent over the next 2 weeks, and maybe I can consider whether I want to move him on or keep him for the rest of the year from there. But I'm sort of leaning towards moving off of him, but if it's depending on if I can get a rookie off field or get him moving on to someone else, then I'll absolutely take the rookie off field every day of the week. So that's just where I'm sort of thinking about him. Harley Reid, 75, was looking like a ton, but absolutely got shut out in that last quarter. I think he went backwards even. So yeah. He's one that I'm looking to move off now, and he has been suspended for 2 weeks, so he is a must trade out pretty much at this stage. It was good that he made a bit of coin right at the end there, just to, bit of a send off. He's been a good pick so far this year. And then just had a few rookies here. Seth Campbell came through clutch with his highest score of the year with a 74. That was really awesome to see, just to boost up that score a little bit. Freya was really consistent, really happy with him, and I did end up bringing in Finn McRae over the Harvey Harrison, just thinking that he may get a few more CBAs, but was not to be. Was a little bit disappointing in the second half. I think he was on 30 at half time, and then just had a really poor second half. So hopefully he can hold his spot and continue to make some cash, but his cash generation is pretty much drying up already, which is really disappointing. In the end, in hindsight, I should have gone Dean, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, overall, a really positive first round. Again, probably just needed maybe one more primo, just to really push up a huge score like a lot of others have. So plus 3, like I said, was Marcus Montepelli, just was awesome. -3 up. I just have to keep the biters, I reckon. 74 from someone that's over 900k is not acceptable. He needs to start getting back into some form, or he is in some trouble for sure. Like I said, just quickly recapping my VCs and Cs. So I did do the VC on English, and that was sort of my plan all along. Was really happy with the 116, and I was tossing and turning around taking that, but I just took it in the end, thinking it was good. I was going into Gorn as a C, so it would have gave me some points, but I don't think the risk was worth taking for an extra 6 points. I was tossing whether it was worth going Ryan, but I just think it's more of a VC thing in my eyes. So it's really tough to just trust him with the C. So hopefully in the coming weeks, I can start trusting him a little bit more and get some of those ceiling scores because he is just awesome back there. And just quickly reviewing my trade. So did trade out Sweet, Nat Fife, and Howes. So 2 red dots and then Nat Fife. Of course, Nat Fife did put up a very nice score as soon as I traded him out. That was always going to happen, and I absolutely know it. If you do still have him, I absolutely recommend trading him out. He is not going to be that guy consistently. Did put up a very decent score in the last term, I thought, just to get his score up to, pretty decent. I think it was in like 50 something at 3/4 time, so did save it a little bit late. But in terms of my trade-ins, was really happy with Nick Dacos. McAuliffe was awesome. It's probably just the last one that wasn't super, a great pick in the end. Hopefully he can hold his spot and put up some decent scores in the coming weeks, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But I think that sort of does it for my team. Let's quickly go through all the games. I've already spent 16 minutes talking about my own team. Not great. So we'll fly through these. There's only 7 games this week, so we should get through these fairly quickly. So Port were defeated by Collingwood. By Carlton on Thursday night. Not so much fantasy relevant here. So Horn Francis, anyone that still has him, put up a very nice 99. Wines, anyone that's still holding him, 92. Pretty good there. Just not really super fantasy friendly game here. No one above a ton for Port. I think it was just quite a restrictive matchup. Both of these teams are quite restrictive in terms of their ball use, so just not a whole lot of movement, I would have thought. Obviously, we had Zach Butters, 74, really disappointing, dropping in cash now. 24 touches, 1 mark, and 4 tackles, just not enough around. Got tagged by Chin Cotter, so that was super frustrating given that, Chin Cotter's not the messiah, so you putting one of your worst players against obviously the best player for the other team, and that absolutely worked in their favour, and it got them the win. So, yeah, super annoying, and maybe it's something we need to flag in future games against Carlton. Whether if they need someone that needs the speed to go with that other player, then he's probably the other person that they look to. But they have used the likes of Hewitt in the past as well, so something to watch. Besides that, people trading in Boak, I probably should have him on the watch list here, but 70, you're probably not super happy with that, but given his price range, he's still making money, so you're not too concerned there. It's a tough matchup, so maybe just you're still probably holding and backing him in from here. And McEntee, I know a few people that brought him in, 33, not great in the end. Did kick a goal on that, so hopefully he just holds his spot and can continue to price more cash generational play throughout the next sort of weeks that you need him for. Moving on to Carlton, so Sammy Walsh was the star of the night, 133, I was absolutely everywhere, 34 touches, 1 mark, and 13 tackles. Did get caught holding the ball a couple times as well, so that probably hurt his score a little bit. Could have been easily over 140. Just wasn't quite there. His time on ground's getting quite good as well. 85% time on ground is quite elite, so he is highly on my trade-in list after his bye. So I've already identified that he has a pretty good run after his bye. If I can just get that up real quick. Where are we? There we are. So he goes Cats, Tigers, GWS, Dogs, and North in a 5-week stretch. So obviously Cats, super easy matchup. Tigers, even easier. Has a tougher one in GWS, who I think are the hardest matchup at the moment, but then has Dogs in North as well. So he's going to be awesome for the rest of the year, and definitely one I'm highly looking at jumping on after his round 14 bye. Moving on here, Nick Newman put up another decent score again as well. Still probably not one I'm looking at just yet, no matter how cheap he's getting. It's just not consistent enough. Crisp, 91. If you have him, I'd still be holding him. He looks pretty good. Just a tough matchup this week. Mackay, kick 3 goals, 89. Anyone still holding him? Probably not one I'm looking to jump on unless I can identify a really easy sort of 5-game stretch where he can probably kick a couple bags, but yeah, not seeing that at the moment. And I think that sort of does it for this game. There's no one else really here that I'm really looking at. Maybe I'm mentioning Matt Kennedy, 36 points. Anyone that had him would have hurt a lot, and he needs to probably go. And this is probably just reinforces why I do not like these sort of players like this, where they're commonly thrown around a lot, where they just play wherever they're needed, and these are the scores that can come from that. So yeah, I'll definitely be moving off them. On to the Friday night game, where Western Bulldogs beat Collingwood at the Marvel. Cripps was absolutely everywhere in this game. He had 3 pings at goal in the first quarter. Could have easily got off to a flyer with 3 goals, but did miss a couple there. So 24 touches, 6 marks, and 10 tackles, and the ball just seemed like it was a magnet to him. No matter what happened, it sort of just landed in his lap. I just remember a couple times where he sort of missed the handball, but then he'd get the tackle afterwards, or he'd receive the kick in from a random distribution from a stoppage, and he'd get to get the kick in. The ball just landing in his lap sometimes, just out of stoppage, and he'd get the mark, and then obviously the +6 for the kick as well. So he just was a killer in this game, and anyone that's picked him up would be very happy. I know fair few people are asking me if he's worth still trading in, and I am in the opinion that it's not worth it. At the end of the day, buys are pretty simple, and that you're going to get an extra game by trading in a player that has already had their buy. So, those 4 teams that have already had their buy in round 12, you're going to get an extra game from them rather than trading in someone like a Jack Cripps who's got the round 15 buy. So, if you're really that confident that Jack Cripps is going to outscore someone with a 1 less game, then I guess you want to go for it. But in the general sense, the simplest thing is to go with someone that is off their buy. They're going to have the rest of the games of the year. Is the perfect time to jump on them. So it's pretty simple. So, but I wouldn't stop you if you want to do it. He is obviously a super cheap option, and yeah, it should be. I want to say he holds his position for the rest of the year, given how good he's been in there. But at the end of the day, they are starting to lose a couple games now, so it is something they may look to change up at some point. Dusty Cameron, anyone jumped on him, 117, you'd be pretty happy with that. Probably not too relevant in the mainstream, I would have thought. Everyone's ruck's pretty sorted. Nick Dacos, 110, pretty happy with that. 32 touches, 3 marks, and 2 tackles. Had a couple free kicks against as well. Kicked 2 goals, 1, so was pretty dominant in this game. Just probably didn't do as many tackling and marks as what we sort of needed for a really big ceiling score for, look at his Supercoach score though. That is just massive. No one else sort of super relevant here. Dean was probably the rookie pickup of the week, I would have thought. Especially given that we don't have too many defender rookies that were coming through. He seemed like he was probably just going to be the one that we should have really picked up, but it was really hard to predict after 39 last week. He is now over 300k and is probably a bit out of reach for most. So anyone that has him would be very happy. And the couple rookie boys here in Sullivan, McRae and Harrison, probably put up subpar scores than what we sort of expected. Moving on to the Bulldogs, we had Bontempelli. I've talked about him enough. Give me a second. 1 second, guys. Sorry, buddy. Come on. Sorry, guys. My cat wanted to get out. There we're at. So Bontempelli, 159. You can't argue with that. Anyone that went VC with him was absolutely massive. I would have never picked it, given how poor he has been in the last sort of, whole season pretty much. So hopefully this is what he needs to kickstart his scoring again. Dale would have been pretty happy with that. He was, I think, a pretty popular VC score that anyone had him. Obviously, it was pretty, very nice matchup for him in terms of matchup. So we'd have been very pleased there. And is quietly going about his business quite well. Like, he's probably been top 6 defender in the last sort of 2 months at least. So, been a very good pickup. English, as I said, 116, pretty happy with that. Had 50 hit out, so it was a very hit out stoppage game, which just quietly I think is going to be quite more common, given now we've got this holding the ball rule, and they are a bit more tightened around that area. So they're probably balling it up a lot quicker than what they have been previously, which is probably leading to a few more stoppages and a few more points for ruckman. So we could see a bit of an increase in ruckman scores. Just something to consider when we're looking at captain scores, I think. Trelaw probably put up a 114, which is about what you would have expected in this matchup. He's been poor in the last sort of month or so, so you'd be really happy with him bouncing back. McRae, we spoke about him a little bit already. Not one I'm interested in holding or bringing in. Gallagher, anyone that's still holding him, had a massive increase in his CBA. So just a quick look here. I think it was up at the 70%, wasn't it? Yes. No. Yeah, 77%, which is just ridiculous. I think he did a bit of a tagging role on a day cost, but yeah, it didn't really stop him too much. So maybe fingers crossed that stays for anyone that's still holding him. He's making some good money, and his job security is pretty elite. So he's one I'd definitely be holding on to throughout the buys at least. Riley Sanders played the full game and scored the 82. As we know what he can do, he's obviously a scoring beast. He just needs that time in that role. So yeah, he has been a good one. Anyone that still has him, I'd definitely be holding him. I don't think Sam Darcy is too fantasy relevant, but he is suspended for 2 weeks, given that bump on Maynard. Frazier, 65, anyone that... I assume everyone picked him up, so he's been super good. He's making some coin, and his job security looks really good as well, so... What the hell was that? Anyways. And I think that's about it for this game. There wasn't anyone else too fantasy relevant there. On to my boys. Hawks got up against the Crows at the MCG on a Saturday afternoon. So we saw Dylan Moore absolutely mad, kicking 5 goals, 27 disposals, 5 marks, and 3 tackles. Was absolutely everywhere. 132 fantasy points, massive Supercoach score as well, just quietly. He just was everywhere in this game, and yeah, it's just one of those games I wish he was a bit more consistent. And maybe with Hawthorn starting to turn the tide a little bit, where they're being a bit more consistent, maybe he can get more of that ball and get a few more goals here and there. So anyone that does have him, you'd be very pleased. But I'm probably still not looking at jumping on him just yet. He can get shut out of the game very easily. Everyone knows how dangerous he can be, so he's one of the first for small forwards to be shut down. I would like to see his CBAs also increase. Maybe when he does get shut down, maybe add that extra avenue to his game where maybe they throw him in the middle to get him away from that tag, or even vice versa, like, you know, throw him elsewhere to get him away from those tags and be a bit more consistent scoring. So has 30% CBA, so getting up there, but he's never going to be this sort of 100% or 80, 70% sort of guy. So you'd be very pleased as an owner. Sicily still just a watch for me. Another 90, so been pretty consistent. Again, still just waiting for that extra defender to come in to help him a little bit more, free him up. But he definitely has the levels of a Luke Ryan when he is freed up and is that distributed off halfback. Will Day, 92, anyone that picked him up would be pretty happy with that. Could have been a lot bigger, but just I think a bit of management there. 75% time on ground was a bit low, I thought, so I didn't really notice any sort of management from the game, but maybe you could see he got stuck on the bench a fair bit. I'm not 100% sure. He should be good for you for a little while yet. Amon, 83, probably a bit unders for what you would have expected in this game, but you're still probably happy with that. Newcomb, 77. I should probably just take him off the watch list now. He's just going to be about that guy. He's going to have some good games. He's going to have some bad games. And I think that's about it for Hawthorn. We'll move on to Crow. So Matty Crouch is the one we need to talk about, I guess. He did put up the massive 133 and has been absolutely amazing for owners over the first part of the year. He has been absolutely amazing. But he is now, I think, done for the season. He has, I don't know exactly the right term, but he's done his AC joint, so his shoulder, and I believe he's having surgery on that, which will put him out for the rest of the season. So he is a must trade, and really unfortunate for those owners because he has been been awesome. Like, he's just been amazing. He's been, I think, put up a lot of 120s in the last couple of weeks. Let's have a quick look. Where am I? Not Brisbane. That's what I've done wrong. Quickly looking at his scores: 133, 98, 119, 117, 103. Just been absolutely amazing, especially if you held through that 1 week hamstring awareness, I think it was, or suspension maybe. I don't know. Can't remember exactly. But he's been an awesome pick, averaging 105. So, yeah, awesome. Now priced over 900k, so he's super easy to jump over to anyone that you're really looking for. So you still will be able to get plenty of upgrades around him. So you just make the adjustment. And it's probably the perfect week for it in the end. We've got 3 trades, so he shouldn't hurt you too bad. Just lucky enough he played out the game and put up a massive score. Rory Laird has officially made my watch list because I really liked what he did in that last half of the game. He went into the halfback, he became the main distributor, and he put up quite a decent score in that last term. I'll bring it up here, but I don't know if it's going to be something that sticks. It could just be something that they were getting beaten pretty heavily in that defense in the CBAs. So maybe they just looked to throw the magnets around. We saw the likes of Dawson go forward, Laird go back, and Ernie came into the CBAs, and it was sort of like a very different dynamic in the midfield where Crouch, Saligo and Berry were in there, but they also threw in McInerney a little bit as well. So it's going to be one to watch for me. He had 11 disposals in the fourth quarter, 5 kicks, 6 handballs, and 2 marks. So he put up to 30. So he could definitely become a pretty handy defender for us if this role sticks. I want to be hopeful, but I'm also a bit more logical that, given that Crouch is out now, that definitely opens up a massive hole for the likes of Laird to go straight into the CBAs and take that role again. And we could see him, who just quietly, he is quite cheap at 834k. Got the Tigers this week. Could definitely break that very easily. So definitely one on my radar pretty highly. Just need to probably identify a pretty good matchup for him, especially definitely after the bye for me anyways. Maybe we're looking at a stretch here, but it doesn't look too friendly in my eyes, so have to wait and see how that looks out. My boy Saligo, 29 disposals, so getting plenty of the ball, just does nothing else. 2 marks, which sort of just fell in his lap, and a couple of tackles, so not enough there to be fantasy relevant, and yeah, very unfortunate pick. Just wish he was able to do a bit more. And the talk of town, I guess, is Dawson, 60, very disappointing. I know a few people had him captain, including my mate, so really disappointing there. A bit of a foot concern before the game, so I think he went through a fitness test and did pass, so I think people were getting a bit, thinking back to what Gawn did last week where he went 150, thinking Dawson could do the same, but was a tougher matchup for him. Hawthorn did probably do a little bit of attention on him, not like a huge amount, just like sort of standing next to him. I think Nash sort of just played a role in him just to keep him a bit more accountable because he got that height, so he stopped his marking a little bit more, and he just didn't look like he was as explosive as he has been. So bit of a watch there. There is whispers that he may be out this week, but I think he's pretty professional and he should be playing. So just one to watch out for. I should probably put Michael McIlhenny also on the watch list, but I didn't see a huge fantasy game from him in terms of when he went in the CBAs. So he went in the CBAs in the second half, and his score didn't increase. So just one to watch there if that's going to be something that eventuates. Moving on to the West Coast and St Kilda, where St Kilda got over them in Perth. Nothing too fantasy relevant here. So Duggan is someone that probably should be making my watch list. It's just that West Coast are not fantasy friendly. Like, look at their team overall score. If they could jump this up to 1600, that would actually be amazing, and we could see some big scores from the likes of Duggan, who is that distributor off halfback. Gets plenty of marks, just not getting enough of it to really put up those big scores. I have identified a pretty good run for him in the back half of the year, so I'm definitely looking at him at some stage, but just need West Coast to start improving their output in fantasy points to really jump on it. Yo put up a 98. He's been really good all year, just yeah, anyone that still has him, be careful. Probably just hold him through his bye, and then I'd be looking to upgrade him for sure. I wouldn't know too many that have held him through his, I think, 2 weeks off. So we saw Flynn come in for his first game of the year, which was a little bit of an interesting dynamic in terms of how they rucked. Like, looking at their stats, we had Flynn that rucked more than what's his name, Bailey Williams, but also Bailey Williams was used more in the CBAs than Flynn, so it looked like Flynn was used more around the ground, but Williams was used more inside, so maybe that was a bit of management there. So one to watch. Maybe I don't know if I continue to see them playing together, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But it did create a bit of a harder matchup in terms of, Marshall. Well, it did put up a 90, but nothing too amazing. Reed, we just spoke about him already. Two week suspension, so he's one that needs to be traded out. A couple of free kicks against, which is really disappointing. Could have put a very good score for us in his farewell game. But I think that sort of does it in terms of West Coast. Not super fantasy relevant. St Kilda, we know how fantasy relevant they are, but they did not perform today on this game. So, not going to talk about Mason Wood. That was just a flash in the pan. I'm not looking at that. Royal Marshall was the second highest scorer for them with a 96. 18 disposals, 4 marks, 2 tackles, and 41 hitouts. So, was pretty good, but just sort of lacked, those really high ceiling scores. Did have 6 free kicks against, which is a little bit disappointing. For anyone that picked him up 2 weeks ago, you'd feel underwhelmed with that for sure. But he's going to be good throughout the year, so I'd just be not worrying about too much. Steele is an interesting one. Look at this. Look at this stat line for something. 17 disposals, 0 marks, 15 tackles. That's just unreal. He has nearly more tackles than he does disposals, which is just unreal. Did have a 0-point first quarter, so he absolutely saved this score from being a stinker, especially for those that did have him as captain. 96, you'd definitely take that after that first quarter. I think he had like a 51 point second quarter, so it's like he never missed the first quarter at all. He just was on track at half time, so that is just ridiculous, and we know how good he can be. He's still managing something, like, it just, I don't know, it's hard to sort of put a finger on what he's managing, but if he can put it all together again, he's definitely one to watch, so one I wouldn't be looking to move on for sure, unless there's something obvious that he needs to go. Wangani Malera, 89, you're happy with that. Sinclair, probably a bit lower, not 84. And I wouldn't discourage you to start looking at moving him on, at his bye. He's just not that guy. I wasn't a fan of people picking him up, and he just hasn't been the guy you would have expected. So he's been very underwhelming, and I wouldn't mind you moving off of him if, it gets you, if your team's starting to come complete and you're in luxury season, then absolutely move him off to a better, more consistent guy. He's not top 6 in defenders. Paddy Dow still slowly increasing his time on ground and getting some decent points, so one to watch there for me. Probably not this time of year. I'm not messing around with that. My general philosophy this time of year is just get to the top line guys. We've got 3 trades, so there should be no reason why you can't do it. Bonner, as I spoke about before, he needs to go now. I think he's probably one of the higher priorities. He's going to drop a lot of coin and undo a lot of that good that he has done so far this season. And similar with Darcy Wilson, probably one you don't have to move on this week, even though he's now going backwards. I think it was just given that he did get sort of hurt in this game a little bit. Bit of a watch if he gets delayed concussion symptoms, but I doubt it. He's pretty young, so should bounce back pretty good. Moving on to Geelong and Richmond, where Geelong got the chockies there. Bowers, we know how fantasy friendly he can be. He just needs that role, so just waiting for the day that he sort of just sticks with it and we can start looking at him as actual potential option. But until then, I'm not looking there. Dempsey, anyone that's still holding him, you absolutely kissed. Joking, nah, he had a very good game. 27 disposals, 3 goals, and 104. You absolutely take that. Holmes is probably a little bit underwhelming from what you would have expected in this super easy matchup. 29 disposals, 4 marks, 2 tackles. Just not waxing back there as much as what we sort of expected. Needs to take a few more cheap marks rather than really being that distributor. He sort of reminds me a lot of a Whitfield. Doesn't really get a lot of the cheap ball, but really works hard to, really work for the team. So he's been an awesome pick though to start the year. So definitely looking at holding him. Stewart is now injured, I believe. I don't know exactly what his injury was, but I think he's out for a little while, so probably one that needs to be moved on. If he does play, then again, I'd still look to move him on. He's been very underwhelming. Conway, anyone that still picked him up, he was good again. 70. He's just sort of a 70 ruckman. He's been pretty decent as a good pickup. He's making a lot of coins, so anyone that has him in R3 is laughing at the moment. Myers, 52. So he's just, after being that super consistent guy for most of the season, he's just now dropped 2 back-to-back really poor games. So it just shows that no one in the forward line is safe, unfortunately. He looked like a really good pick, and now he's just really gone back on all those coaches that picked him up, trying to get a consistent option. So it's just, the forward line is terrible. What can you do about it? Nothing, unfortunately. Just get the good guys and, play around with the rest. Moving on to the Tigers, so we had Nankervis at 141. Absolutely killed it in this game, so it shows that Conway is a super easy matchup. 51 hit outs to 21. That's just an absolute slapping there. Baker, 112. Did look like he was getting subbed out at pretty early on the game with a hamstring, but came back on and absolutely killed it from there. And people asking me again, would you pick him up? I personally won't. Again, he's just that Swiss Army knife where he gets thrown around wherever they needed him to. And there is a lot of competition coming for his spot very quickly. With, Prestia should be back next week after being managed this game. You got Taranto, I think, is only 1 or 2 weeks away. I think that was last week, so he could even be back this week. Shane Bolton should be back as well this week after concussion last week. And Hopper's still a couple weeks away, but there's just they're having some troops come back, so I'd be very concerned about what his role becomes. We know he doesn't score well in his other roles, so that's why I just don't pick these little guys. I want the guys that are going to be consistent in their role for the rest of the season. Seth Campbell, anyone that still has him like myself, would have been very pleased with the 74. He's sort of kickstarted his cash generation a little bit again. What's his break even now? 31. So yeah, he's been an awesome pick to start the year, and one I'll look to jump off at a later stage. Cam McAuliffe, like I said, was on track for a ton at halftime, but then really slowed in that half. So he should hold his spot. He was really good in that side. But again, just one I am concerned about given the troops they have come back. So just something to watch there. But they had a lot of underwhelming performers there that definitely could go before him. Obviously, Latifu was out with is now out with an ACL, so he's done. That opens up another spot. And Pickett as well, I think, is out with, I think it was a twinge or something, or maybe a hamstring, so he could be out for a little while as well. So again, they have some troops coming back, but they also have troops going out, so something I'm not too concerned there. And finally, Caleb Smith, I think it's Caleb Smith, isn't it? That's not what me. It's Caleb Smith. I'm pretty confident with that. Was the sub for the game, so anyone picked him up would be pretty disappointed with that. Only came on for the 14% time on ground and scored the 10 points. So hopefully he can get a game because we know how well he can score. Melbourne was defeated by Fremantle in a slapping in Alice Springs here. And there were some massive scores. So we'll start quickly through Melbourne. Gone 122. You'd be happy with that if you captained him. Did have a cheeky +8 after the game. So that you'd be really pleased with that, especially if you captain. Sort of expected him to have a pretty good game. I thought Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson are not too bad of a matchup. We saw, like I said, Darcy Cameron 117 against them, so Gorn did a little bit better than that, which is good to see. Petrarca's starting to find some form again, not getting the super ceiling scores, so Not one I'm super interested at the moment. Salem, anyone picked him up, 88. You'd be pretty happy with that in what was a very slapping game. So maybe when Melbourne get a little bit more composure and they can chip the ball around a little bit more, he may get a few more points. So there's one to watch. Oliver, 68. Again, just tackling his way to a decent sort of fantasy points. Nothing too crazy. 19 disposals is just well below what we sort of expect from him. We know he's an accumulator. He should be having 30 plus disposals every single week. So there's something not going on there. Even to the eye for me, his teammates are just burning him a lot. Like, he's out in the space. He's running along for a quick handball, receive, 1-2 sort of thing, and they just don't give it to him. They'd rather kick it to someone else or share the ball elsewhere. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Oliver in another team's colours by the end of by the end of the year. Sorry, well, next year, sorry. Just something not right there. But besides that, there's no one else really to mention here. Windsor, if anyone still had him, would definitely be a time to move off of him. And that's about it, I think. So we'll move on to Fremantle, where they absolutely waxed in this game. So we had Jordan Clark again go massive. So what's his three average there? He's gone massive since cracking the ton. So 141, 128, and 151 after what was a tad game. Has been absolutely elite. It's been an awesome starting pick for anyone that picked him. He's just been amazing. Super consistent in the 90s. Did drop a couple lower ones, so anyone that sort of jumped off after those games would be fairly filthy. But yeah, anyone that's done this, anyone that's held on would be fairly happy with his scoring output. And I don't see it slowing down. I don't know if the game plan has just changed, but they're just using him more and more now. Luke Ryan and him just love to share the ball back and forth, and it's proven that they're winning. So why would they change anything? So something to really consider. Maybe we actually need to start looking at a Jordan Clark after their bye. My boy Luke Ryan, 142, really happy with that. Did concern me a little bit where he went off for a period of time. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter, just with, I think he had a little bit of an ankle twinge. So, but came back on, 18 marks, 28 disposals. You're gonna be happy with that. So he's one that I would highly recommend everyone jump on at some stage. Looked like he got rested in the last little bit. Same with Clark, so they're both off. Hayden Young could have been a lot bigger. Could have been massive. He was on 105, I think, at three-quarter time, but only had like 2 disposals in the final term. I think he only had 55% time on ground in the last quarter, so was getting managed fairly heavily there in that game. Nothing too much to worry about. It's just what Fremantle do. They're pretty good at managing their stars. Sarong, 106. It's just, he's super consistent at getting these tons. He doesn't drop below that very often, but he's not putting up those big ceiling scores enough to be, a superstar, unfortunately. Luke Jackson, anyone that's still holding him would be very pleased with his 3-goal 2 effort with 100 fantasy points. Brayshaw, you're probably pretty disappointed. 96. He's just not been that guy. Not one I'm looking at. Fife in his farewell game. 84. People would be happy with that. I'm annoyed as a trader. Wish I saw that in the last sort of 3-4 weeks. In Sharp, 80. I'm really happy with that after what it could have been. And in his farewell game for me, he is going this week. But that's probably sort of does it for this game as well. So, big scores there. Hopefully we see a few more of those, and we may need to jump on a few of those guys. Anderson for the Suns. So, Suns beat Essendon in a really close one. Really, probably the game in the round, sorry. Big upset here. Anderson, 118. Super, like just a yo-yo, honestly. Just up and down. Scores a 60, scores a 140, scores a 120. Like, he's just very up and down. But you'd be pretty happy as an owner. Anyone still holding him. Flanders, enough said. He's just got to be that guy all year. Top 3 forward for sure. Sexton, I love the combo between these two. Just when they play together, they play so much better. So hopefully that continues. Miller, that's unfortunate. Disappointing is all I'm going to say in what should have been probably a bigger matchup. He's just been super consistent as a 90 guy, so not doing enough, and maybe one I'd be looking to jump off next week at his bye. If anyone that owns him, he's just not been, that 105 guy that we sort of expected. Euland, as a rookie defender, did really well, 89. Just, I don't know, he looked like he was being that main distributor off halfback. 11 marks, 17. 13 marks. God damn, I can't read. Is massive. Like, compared to the nearest is an 8. That's 5 more marks. So I don't know why they're looking for him so drastically, or maybe he was just in the most space. But definitely a watch. I don't know what his price is actually at. How do you spell it? Euland. I don't know how to spell it. UW. That's right. UW. Yeah, fuck. Not paying that price, unfortunately. But what has he gone up? He's gone up 250k for the season. So he's been a really good pick. Anyone that did pick him, he's been 10%. That's more than I thought. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Anyone that picked him. Moyle, anyone that jumped on him for his game without Wits. I think Wits is out for a little while longer as well. So he's one that's scored well on the weekend. Got to make some coin as a decent... Definitely wouldn't have him on field, but as an R3, below 500k, went up 48k. Not bad at all. Hopefully, he gets some consistent games. Closey is one that I am heavily considering moving out now. He's made his coin now going backwards, so his time is up. It's just tossing up whether you hold him for this week for his final game against St Kilda, who are a very nice matchup in terms of wingmen. I can just show you that here. St Kilda, so super green, and then you can probably look at trading him out on his buy. So I'm tossing up whether that's worth it or not. Graham probably needs to go as well. After all that holding of him, he put up a 43 and pretty much stopped all his cash generation, so that's really disappointing. Two tackles is not like him. I don't know, was his CBAs any good? It's probably something I didn't notice too much. 6-2, so really good CBAs, and they did win, so maybe he probably will hold his spot if you're looking elsewhere, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. But yeah, definitely not the fantasy scores that we were looking for. And on to the last team in Essendon. Merritt, 115, highest score of the team. Just not putting up super big scores, like I said, but pretty consistent as a fantasy player. Really happy with him. Caldwell, 101. Anyone that had him just tackled his way to a good score. You'd be pretty happy. Not too much more to comment on there. Probably wouldn't be looking at grabbing him, just given his role and such. Can we have a look at his CVAs if he had many? Come on, gonna load or what? Where is he? Caldwell, 30%. So yeah, his role's not great, but in terms of they've got so many shit forwards, so he's not bad one to hold. Nick Martin, just because consistent 100. I think he had a little bit of a role this week. Just again, Ridley's taken a few points off him. I don't think he had many kick-ins again. Gonna have a quick look at that. Yeah, zero kick-ins. So I just want to spread it out a little bit, which is a little bit disappointing for what you want, because you want that main distributor, but they seem like they have many. So yeah, not too worried about Nick Martin at all. And Ridley, anyone that jumped on him would be pretty pleased. 94 again. I think he's going to be that sort of guy. He's going to be about that 95 to 100. He's just that main interceptor. He's going to take a lot of marks, but then he's also going to get a fair bit of cheap ball at the back line there. 9 marks, you're pretty happy with that. And 22 touches. Just needed a few more tackles, a few more disposals to get him up to a pretty decent score. So you'd be pretty happy with him. Definitely still makes my watch list for the back end of the year. Just given what he can do. So one to watch. But I think that sort of does it for all the game reviews. So not a whole lot of stuff that we really learnt that was new. Maybe the most relevant news is obviously Adelaide. Obviously they changed a few things. So looking at Rory Laird, Crouch obviously being out for an extended period of time, so that probably makes him a bit more relevant. but it also throws in the hat of a Sam Berry. Does he come in and play that same role that Crouch is doing, so that his price point is very cheap, so one to definitely watch. 430k, I think he's priced about 40 or something like that, so he could definitely have a big increase in his score. No, sorry, he's not priced at 40, I think he's priced at 50, about 50, so if you think he can go, 80s, then he's definitely a good pickup, but again, I'm not messing around with these guys just at this point in time. One to watch for the week, he's got a pretty high break even of 57 for what he has been doing, so one to watch for me. Should probably make the watch list. But what are we doing this week is probably what's on everyone's mind. It is obviously the buys, and we are now looking to trade in around 12 players. So let's quickly go through the clubs that have the round 12 buy. So got Brisbane being probably one of the more fantasy relevant. So we have like a Zorko, a Dunkley, and Neil, probably the main three targets that you're looking at there. So I'd be looking at what their run is like. We can even have a quick look here for inside mids for Brisbane. You've got Western Bulldogs, St Kilda, Port, and Melbourne. So it's not a terrible run. Like I wouldn't say it's great, but definitely not the best for sure. So I don't mind picking up a Neil or a Dunkley. I'd probably definitely go a Dunkley over a Neil, just given the consistency. I'm not a huge fan of Neil. I just don't think he's super fantasy relevant anymore, even though he has put up some decent scores in the past month. But again, those have come up against some pretty easy matchups, so he's not going to have that luxury all year. But at his price point, if he's the only thing you can get to, then I don't mind it at all. Zorko is one that we need to definitely consider. As you can see, he's in my team currently after my trades, so I've already locked something in. But we know how good he's been so far this season, and he's going to hurt anyone that doesn't jump on him, so I'm looking at doing that. And looking at his run is something that needs to be considered for sure. Looking at this, so he's got Western Bulldogs, who have typically been a pretty easy matchup for defenders. Not quite as friendly this year, but in the time they have been. St Kilda, obviously the best matchup you can get. Then has St Kilda later on in the year as well. So I think he can put up some very decent scores over the back end of this year. We even scored a bloody 180 against Gold Coast early on in the year. So something to consider, and one I'm definitely willing to pay up for, given that we do have this, 3 trades. You might as well get up to the best player you can, and I think it shores up my forward line and secures that. So definitely one you should be looking at. Couple other players we need to look at. So we also had who was it? GWS on the buy. So only person we're really looking at here is Tom Green. I think is the only relevant one. And I've done a bit of research on this, and I can see why people maybe not wanting to look into it. Like I know he's been pretty poor in the last month for sure after his injury. He's definitely been managing something. I'm a hopeful owner that the week has given him a good rest and he's going to come back, fighting in the back half of the year. But just even looking at his run to come up back into the year, it's not great. Like it's actually pretty awful in terms of, he goes Hawthorn, who are a tough matchup this week, where Nash may play on him. Port and Sydney, 2 harder matchups. A decent stretch there, but Carlton have been tough on that day. Richmond, obviously the easiest matchup, but there's rarely any green at all in this entire stretch. So I don't mind the gamble to sort of just go against him. He is fairly highly owned. I think he's about 40%. So yeah, that's a big chunk. If you just back yourself and you say he's not going to go, anywhere around his 110 or that area, and you just say as of this 90 guy, you could be getting 10, 15 points on top of all us owners for the rest of the season if you can pick the right player, like maybe going a Dunkley instead. I know he's a bit more expensive, but he could definitely be a lot more of a consistent player than what Tom Green has shown. So I definitely don't mind that gamble, and it's probably something I'd personally take on if I didn't have him. But as an owner, moving him on doesn't personally benefit my team, so I'm not looking at that. I'm just backing him in. Only other person maybe worth mentioning is Toby Green, but I don't think he's super fantasy relevant. He's slowly getting into a bit of form, but yeah, just not being consistent enough. He's dropping a few 50s, but having a couple of 90s as well. So not one I'm considering. Who else do we have on the bye? We had North Melbourne. So anyone that doesn't have Sheasel like myself, needs to consider maybe jumping back on him now. Just after the CBA usage of the last couple of weeks is slowly increasing. He's becoming a bit more of a consistent midfielder. So that is a positive sign for him in his career, because I don't know if he's going to make it as a small forward. But yeah, if he can be a 105 guy as a full-time midfielder, I'm absolutely taking that. He's going to be top 6. So I'm looking at buying him at his low, which could very much be sort of next week as such, because he's got West Coast this week. So it could be a fairly easy matchup for him. So yeah, one to watch for us non-owners. Besides that, if McCurch is back named, then I wouldn't mind jumping back on him. He was sort of in my calculations before I grabbed Zorko, but definitely don't mind him there. He's got a pretty good run as well. We know what he can do in that back line, being a pretty consistent 90 guy back there. So one to watch for me. Probably not. You're not jumping back on a Cherry, so wouldn't want to look there. But he does have West Coast this week, so we'll have to watch how that matchup goes against Flynn. And finally, we had the Sydney Swans. So the likes of Heaney, Goulden. Wouldn't look at Grundy, so probably only Heaney and Goulden are probably the only matchups that you'd be looking at. Maybe if you want to go a Warner, then I wouldn't discourage that. He's been pretty good all year. Pretty consistent, actually. Hasn't dropped below 86. And he's been putting up some bags of scores. Like he's pretty much kicked a goal a game. Only had the one poor game, which was his lowest score. But against Richmond, who surprisingly actually beat them. So, bit of a blemish there. Probably wouldn't take that too much into factor. But definitely very unique, I would have thought. Yeah, 3%. But I do really like Gordon as an option. He is highly in my consideration, especially because he's got the Cats this week. 17% owned, so quite lowly owned. We know what he can do. It's slowly getting more and more time on ground. So he was sort of this 98 guy, low 90s, but he's even getting up to 97% now. Just elite, and he could well and truly get to 100% by the end of the season. So definitely one I'd be looking to pick up fairly shortly. But if I had to choose between like a Golden and a Heaney, I'd grabbing Heaney every day of the week. He's got the role. Favourable matchup this week. It's a bit more, $5,000 cheaper. So, and it's also just forward status. It shores up your forward line. So I'd be definitely doing that for anyone that doesn't have him. So just to sort of summarise what you need to be doing this week, it's pretty straightforward. So need to be jumping off, whether that's around 13, 14, and 15 players. Take this week as sort of a bit of a cheat week where if you are heavy in around 14 or 15, then you can start to move off those players to really set yourself up in the next couple of weeks, because we're going to be hitting them pretty quickly as of next week. And if you're not fielding a proper 18 or maybe even a suitable 20, then you're going to hurt, because a lot of people will be fielding a lot more than that and be getting a lot of points up on you. So something you definitely need to consider. So what are my trades this week? So these are my trades. So I'm pretty happy with them already. So I've already locked them in. I highly doubt this is what will stay, because I'm sure something will be thrown into works. But I've gone Harley Reid, obviously 2 weeks out, needs to go. So I locked him in straight away to go to Toby McMullen and took the 300k and ran with it. Toby McMullen is sort of a placeholder at the moment. I do hope he plays, because he does have the lowest break even of the rookies. But there's no guarantee that he does play, given they may have few people come back. Riley Bonner is making way for me, just given he's going backwards now, and I want to utilise that cash on his head in his role change. So I've swapped him straight to Fisher. I think Fisher's top 6 forward, so that's a pretty easy one to grab, and I think he's going to be the number 1 target for this week. If you don't have him, I'd highly recommend him. And I've also moved on Jeremy Sharp, and I've used the 300k from Harley Reid to jump up to Dane Zorko. So really shoring up my forward line, essentially. But Fisher's in my back line this week. I will look to shuffle these sort of guys forward as we go along. So I think this is all my forward line will need. I can now purely focus on my midfield pretty much, because that is my weakest zone. So really only have Bontempelli, Merritt, and Zach Butters, if you want to count it as sort of those primos. Green's sort of sitting there as well. Oliver's not doing well. So just need to get some few bigger guys like a Walsh or Sarong. Who else is there that I can think of? A Dunkley. Why is it not showing up? Average. Just looking at average here. Probably not looking at Trelaw, Steele, Dawson. Just these sort of guys. I need to start getting these guys in, because this is where I'm sort of hurting a lot, unfortunately. As a general rule of thumb, I generally like to fill up my midfielders a lot more, like early on in the season, because they score the most points over the season. So, but just given the unusual year that I've personally had, and what obviously being the forward line, we've messed around on there a lot. Obviously, I had my ruck roulette as well in the ruck line there, so it just hasn't gone super to plan. But that's sort of my plans for my trades. I'd say this is pretty common across the board. I think a lot of people are looking at getting 2 upgrades this week. In Fisher's obviously being so cheap, and then you can use some money on someone else's head to get up to a pretty decent top 6 or top 8 forward or mid. So that's where we sort of sit at the moment. Quick preview for what it's sort of looking like this week in terms of trade-ins. So Fisher's number 1, pretty obvious there. A lot of people trading Golden, Green. Toby McMullen's a pretty obvious rookie there. Heaney, anyone's jumping on him. Dean, I don't mind that at all. Zorko, 2.6, that's good to see. Dunkley. Agwin, probably not looking at as much. Chad Warner, as I said. People are still jumping on Sexton, don't mind that at all. He's got St Kilda this week. But again, it's probably just not the right week to do it. You know, you want to trade in these round 12 players. So a lot of people are doing some smart moves. Who are they trading out? Tyler Reid, number 1, 17.4k. Wow, yeah, he needs to go. Closey, a lot of people jumping off him. I'm looking at holding him just one more week, given the matchup. But if his money on his head got me to the player I wanted, then I absolutely would have. But Sharp gives me that extra bit of coin. Wilson's finally time for him to go, so I'm glad to see the back end of him after he's been hurting me all season. Bonner, Matt Crouch needs to go. Sharp. People trading up Butters. Interesting. Very interesting. Don't know if I'd be doing that, but sure. Don't mind it. But yeah, we'll get into this a little bit more as it comes in my Wednesday video, where we'll deep dive into who we should be trading out, who should be trading in. So hopefully that does it for today, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I guess I'll catch you guys on Wednesday. Have a good night. Bye.